Murder in the morning from the Hidden Killers podcast.
Just the other night, NewsNation in Banfield and Rick McHugh, one of their contributors, put together a very interesting interview with John Paul Miller, J.P. Miller, as he's known. This is the estranged husband of Mica Miller. The internet's been just going crazy over for the last several months now, after the tragic death of Mica Miller, where she took her own life in the woods. Lots of people arguing about that, saying that couldn't have been. I don't know. I mean, the evidence certainly does point to suicide, and pretty solid evidence pointing to that she did take her own life. So there's no way are we saying that he was involved in that in any sort of direct way of pulling a trigger or anything of that nature. But a lot of people have questions. How did she get to this place? And his behavior has been bizarre, to say the least. That's my conjecture. I'll let you have your opinion here. We're going to break down some of that interview from Banfield and NewsNation, which it is up on their website, newsnationnow.com, or their YouTube channel. I do highly encourage you go and check this out. But it's a bizarre story. And I should say this: John Paul Miller's never been charged with anything. He is a free man, and there's, as far as we know right now, no investigation necessarily into him. But just weird behavior. But people can be weird. So is it just that? But what's going on? Lots of questions unanswered from this whole case. In this interview with NewsNation's Rich McHugh, John Paul Miller discusses the months leading up to his wife's death, the intense public scrutiny that followed, revealed his efforts to persuade Mica to take lithium for her mental health struggles to stay with him. That's a big point of this whole interview. And his story is that she was off her meds, and he'd been trying to get her to take the meds, but she had left him. And I think from the evidence we've seen from her own testimony, for good reason, there's allegations of abuse. He denies all of that, but her own words say this. Her family says that. He says this is all the rantings, basically, and I'm just paraphrasing, of a mentally ill woman. I don't know the answer to what truly is going on here, but it's all very bizarre. Let's take a look at this first segment here. When Rich is asking John about, did you know that this was going to happen? Was there any signs? This is from NewsNation.
I've been talking since this happened, basically, communicating over text. Why now? Why the decision to speak now after all this time has passed? Where's your head at?
Well, I think a part of it is I finally got the approval of my attorneys to do so. They, the ones working on the defamation cases, they said it's easier to win a defamation case the more the people talk. And so they've been collecting a lot of evidence over the past while. And also I think that now that some of the emotion has died down in the world and with people that are led by their feelings, I think now they deserve to hear some logic and some truth, and make their own assessment. So.
Do you miss her?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you see this coming?
Yes, but it doesn't change at all the power of the pain of reality. I saw it coming for years. I told them for years this would happen over, and I said if she gets off her medicine, suicide is the next thing. She tried it in the past, but with me, she always remained okay with me. She was on her meds with me. She was healthy and happy. And even if she did get low or stop taking her medicine, I would help her get back on it, and things would be fine without me and with her family. She's off meds, and she committed suicide. And I told them this would happen over and over again. I tried my best to stop her from getting a gun. I went to judges. I have copies of all the police. I talked to her counselor, the pastor she was going to, her family, her friends. I told them all, don't let her get a gun. Do whatever it takes, prevent her from getting a gun. And when she was with me, she was never able to go that far. But with them, that's exactly what happened. And it destroyed me. And I still haven't really grasped it. Like, it hasn't, I kind of keep putting off the reality of it. And I try not to think about it as much as I can.
On the day of her death, Mica Miller drove alone to a pawn shop, purchased a gun and ammunition, then made it to another stop at a gas station before heading to Lumber River State Park. There, she dialed 911 and informed the operator of her intention to die by suicide and where her body could be found. Police arrived within 10 minutes and discovered her body. This is what he had to say about that with NewsNation.
I didn't think it was real. I thought her family had made it up and had somebody call me and say that. So that's one big thing. I didn't think it was real. When I found out it was real, you know how like you tell somebody something, you tell them. Then when it happens, you don't want to say I told you so because it's a horrible thing. That's what I felt like. I felt like I told y'all, like I told her family this so many times you can't imagine. I told her friends this. I told everybody. I said, if y'all don't get her lithium, she's going to commit suicide. Her doctor told her this on paperwork where her doctor said this. And then when I get the call, here's what I felt like. I felt like the world's biggest failure because I spent the past 3 months when her family got her out of the hospital and didn't bring her home. And her dad talked her into buying him a car and all this stuff was happening that was all crazy. I made a vow that I was going to do something every single day to try to get her back on her lithium and save her life. And so every day I did something. Sometimes I did 4, 5, 6, 7 things. Some days it's just one thing. But every day, whether it was an email, a text, visit someone, talk to a family member, talk to a friend, go somewhere, go to a judge, go to probate, I'm going to do something to save her life. And I spent every single day for those 3 months doing that. So getting that phone call made me feel like the world's greatest failure. I was against the whole world because everyone told me that it wasn't true and that I was making it up and that whatever they were saying. So it was me against the world for 3 months and I failed.
Well, there's more to this. What I find interesting is how much he's making her death about him.
Yeah. That feels really empty to me. Like, yes, I understand that you are affected by it, but what led her to that is really important. And I'm not sure this is turning into, but what about me? What about me? What about me?
I did this. I felt like this. I felt like that. Like, okay, great. We've heard you repeat that 20 times now. It's a bizarre way of reacting. And again, I don't think he killed her. I don't. But I don't know what the fuck is going on here because this is just such a weird, discombobulated reaction to something so horrible that it just feels very weird. And it might, honestly, it might just be that. Well, this might be a really weird off guy. From what we can tell, kind of seems like it.
What bothers me so much, and, there's dysfunctional relationships all over, so many people probably listening to us right now are in a dysfunctional relationship. What bothers me so much is the shit that he did to her before she killed herself. A topless photo online, slashing her tires, putting a tracker.
But he's denying all that now. He's denying that those things. He's denying that those things ever happened. He's saying that those things just happened. He just wrote them in an email because she was having a mental health episode, and the only way to get her to come back was to put that in the apology letter, saying that he was doing those sorts of things. This is how he's been explaining it now with NewsNation.
Well, then he's got some issues because if you can't be honest in a relationship and all you're doing is lying and walking on eggshells, you've got a problem.
Well, that's not a good way to live by any means, but it is weird to say that. Again, I mean, mental health is a crazy thing, but I don't know. It seems like a weird excuse of saying that you did all this just for so she would get back on her medicine. And if that's the case, then that's horrible. But it's bizarre. The whole thing is bizarre. Let's keep listening.
What was the call and who was the call from and what did they say?
Man, it was a man I got a call, and it was I think it was a detective. I think, and I remember him being very calm and very nonchalant. And so that's when I thought, well, this is not real. And so I started screaming. I had a family member that was there with me. I started screaming for them to use their phone to call the hospital where the guy said she was at. And my family member called the hospital and said it was real. And I still didn't believe it. And so I called a police chief that I know somewhere around here, a captain or somebody. And I said, there's a detective named such and such on the phone telling me these things. Like, is this real? Is this a real person or not? And that person told me that it was real as well. And I just remember, screaming really loud and throwing up everywhere. And
what did they tell you?
I remember throwing up. Did I have spaghetti that day? It was a lot of throw up. It was something red.
That's the weirdest fucking line of this entire interview. Did I have spaghetti that day? I did a spit take when I heard that the other day. I was like, what? He's talking about what he ate. Did I have spaghetti that day?
It reminds me of an Eminem song, you know?
This is the weirdest thing to say. Who the fuck talks about throwing up? And then in the interview, was that Taco Bell I had that day? I mean, what the fuck? What the fuck was that?
Your wife's dead, you know? Is that what you're talking about? What your vomitus look like?
Did I have spaghetti that day? Yeah.
I'm sorry?
What did they tell you?
And then he loses his train of thought. I'm sorry? Contemplating spaghetti.
I don't remember that. Oh, no, I don't remember that. Hold on.
What do you remember? What don't you remember?
I don't remember. He said, my family member called the hospital and spoke to, I think, either the head nurse or medical examiner or somebody. And that lady read me stuff that the Robinson County, I guess, had wrote on a piece of paper. And she was reading me suicide and the weapon and where it was at and all these different facts. And so then because the detective would not tell me it was suicide. And then I called him back and told him what the hospital told me, and he was pissed off and asked me who that lady's name was, and I didn't know her name. And if I did know, I wasn't going to tell him anyway, because I'm glad she told me. Anyway, and so, and I said, is this stuff true? And I can't remember if he said yes or just hung up. I don't remember.
Do you remember what he said, though?
Oh, man, I don't remember at all. If I try to enunciate it, I'll probably be making something up based on all the crashing of everything going on. So I can't tell you for sure.
It's really important to watch this interview and watch his eyes. There's something about it. I don't know what. I'll let you glean from it what you will. Court documents reveal a tumultuous relationship between Mica and John Paul Miller, marked by allegations of abuse. Mica accused her husband of stealing her car, installing a tracking device, hospitalizing her against her will, and grooming her since she was 10 years old. In an email obtained by NewsNation, John Paul Miller apologized for posting a topless photo of Mica online, saying, quote, "I'm sorry for putting a picture of you on the internet," he wrote. "It was for less than 1 hour and immediately taken down. I was hurt that you are telling everyone horrible, intimate details of my past sin, and I just wanted to try and hurt you. Please forgive me. It was evil of me to do that." And he goes on to explain that that he was just appeasing her and saying these things because that's what she wanted to hear, is his claim, and that these were all that's a lie, that this thing happened, but he was saying this so that she would take her medicine. Let's listen to more of the interview.
What was going on in your marriage the week Mica died?
The week she died, we didn't talk that entire week. I'd emailed her several times that week, and my regular emails are sending her letters telling her that I love her. And she came over to the house. The last time I saw her was a few weeks before she passed away. We spent about 4 hours together. And we hugged and kissed, and she was in and out of psychotic conversations. She would say one thing about double agents that are following her. That was one of the phrases she would use when she was offered meds, double agents. The other phrase she would say, she wants to come home so bad, but her family won't let her. She told me she wanted to live in Africa and asked me if I'd live with her. I said, sure, if you take your medicine, And so she told me if I'd give her some money and if I would write her a letter saying certain things in this letter that she would take her medicine. And so I tried that, but she desperately wanted to come home. She was just so afraid her family would disown her. And so the week before she passed away, I probably emailed her maybe 7 or 8 times that week just saying, I love you, you need your lithium, don't forget who you are when you're on medicine versus who you are when you're off. She had lost 40 pounds in a month, and nobody that was in her life thought to take care of her. Nobody. She was living with a former registered nurse. Her family, quote unquote, were taking care of her. She lost 40 pounds in 1 month, and no one thought she needed help. She was talking about living in Africa. No one thought she needed help. She's making videos on Facebook, and if you see the videos, you know it's not her because she has a different cadence, a different tone, a different amount of words per minute when she's healthy and on medicine than when she's off. And the way she was even looking into space when she's taking those videos, you knew she was delusional. And if somebody loved her enough to take her to a professional and say, okay, this woman says she's being abused, or this woman says, this, or she's lost 40 pounds in a month. If someone thought, I need to take her to a professional, that professional would have known that she needed medicine. And the reason I know that's true is because I took her a few weeks before she passed away. I took her to probate court. And in 3 minutes time, she went in, she walked back out. When I went in, they said, your wife is mentally ill and she needs medicine desperately. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's get her the medicine. Let's get her help. And they said she's not a danger to anybody in society, so we can't force her to do it. But if one of her family members or friends had taken note of the way she was acting and seen what was happening to her physically and taken her to just one professional, they could have saved her life.
He's got an answer for everything, doesn't he?
He does.
He's
yeah.
got
I would think in this situation, he would just be quiet and go, we tried everything,
Yeah. I mean, he's discounting and trying to discredit Mica herself in the videos that she made online, saying that's not her. It's she's staring off into space. Like, I don't one of the most calm, sane videos that I've seen of this case has been her talking about abuse and has been her talking about getting out of abuse.
Yeah.
And that is to me a very powerful, not crazy video. The only times that we see these allegations of double agents and all sorts of shit like that are things that he's saying. I'd love to, if there's videos of that, let's see them. But all we've seen is seemingly him saying that she's doing these things. The videos that she's put out when she was alive didn't seem to have any, they actually seemed to be pretty grounded in someone who was finding their way out of a situation that they were not happy in. 9 days after receiving an email, Mica Miller sent an affidavit to her attorney detailing the abuse that she had suffered since their marriage. Since the day we became husband and wife, I have been abused in every way I can think of, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, financially, and physically, she wrote. She also accused John Paul Miller of showing up in person around town and putting tracking devices on her car. The former pastor acknowledged writing an apology email, but claimed not everything in it was true. He asserted that Mica had demanded $10,000 and an apology letter in exchange for taking her medication and coming home. I got to the point where she says, you know what? I'll take my medication and I'll come home if you'll give me $10,000 and you'll write me an apology letter, he said. Look, I'm not here to say that that's not impossible, but I've never, ever heard of anyone doing anything of that sort to take their medication. Extremely mentally ill people. Never. This is just sounds so bizarre. So
it feels bizarre. And part of my thought process is, why do we know so much about this case? Why is this out in the public? Because he made it public.
Exactly. We wouldn't know about it unless if he hadn't opened his mouth and started sharing all of this randomness with everyone. That's what's made everyone go and look at this like, what the hell is going on here? It just leads to so much confusion because it's not adding up as the typical someone's trying to hide a murder case. I don't know what to make of it other than it's just really weird. Mica Miller's family and friends described a different scenario, alleging that John Paul Miller felt like, quote, he owned her and exhibited patterns of abuse and violence. Sierra Francis, Mica's sister, stated in an affidavit that Mica had expressed fear for her life, saying, quote, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was JP, unquote. Despite these allegations, John Paul Miller maintained that his wife was safe, healthy, and happy when she was with him. He recalled incidents where Mica expressed suicidal thoughts and his efforts to ensure that she received medical help. She would wake up and say, I think I'm supposed to die today. And I said, no, honey, you're not going to do that, he recounted. Following Mica's death, John Paul Miller announced her passing during a sermon, attributing her death to mental illness and asking the congregation not to discuss it within the church. Reports indicate that Mica had filed for divorce multiple times and had posted a video on Facebook weeks before her death offering advice to those in abusive relationships. Let's listen to more.
First, let's discuss why I preached that morning. Is that okay? Okay, so people have been asking that. So have you ever taken any psychology classes or anything like that?
Very few.
Okay, yeah, I haven't taken any. So I would love to find a book or a psychology professor or someone that could tell me the correct response when you spend 7 years trying to keep someone alive by just taking a few pills that their family tells them not to take. Then when they don't take it, they go into a hospital, their family takes them out, and then you spend 3 months trying to get them help when their family's telling them that you're evil and the bad person. And then it finally happens, the thing that you've been dreading for 7 years, then you're trying to prevent for 7 years, then it happens. I don't know what the correct response is, right? Am I supposed to stay home and cry? Am I supposed to go out with my friends? Am I supposed to go to a bar and drink? I don't know what the right thing is, right? As a pastor, should I just get on my knees and pray? I mean, I want to die in that moment. And so the next morning, I remember thinking, okay, if I stay home, I'm probably going to kill myself. I'm probably going to just go to heaven and be with her and be done. Because I need to be around people, but I don't want to be around people and come to church if I'm not going to preach, because then I'll be judging the guy that's preaching the whole time. And I can preach just as easy as I can breathe. So I'm just going to go in the mode of what I'm normally going to do and just continue my life normally until I finally have to deal with what's going on. And so I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know the right response. I wish somebody had told me, in hindsight, if I go back in time, I probably would have done the same thing and still preached. And then at the end, and the sermon was about leaving your legacy and the people you leave on earth and your memory that's being left. So I thought maybe that's God. Then I thought, you know what, Mica would want me to preach. That's exactly what she'd want me to do. She'd be telling me to do it. She'd be trying to force me to do it. So I preached. And then at the end of the sermon, when I made the announcement was made. And of course, I'm not in a clear thinking frame of mind. I mean, it's like, it's not like I'm, kumbaya and got it all together. I said what I said because I didn't want them to think that it was because she's a bad person, or I wanted them to know, like, if Mica does anything that's out of character, it's because of her mental illness. It's not because of her.
And that just seems to be the excuse of everything. It's if she says anything bad about me, if she does anything, I know he didn't say that directly, but it kind of takes all of that, of anything that's not normal or anything that seems to be out of the bounds of anything positive about him. It's the mental illness. It's this. Really wants to drive that point home in that nervous rambling that we just heard there.
Well, and thank you for bringing up the nervous rambling, because I wanted to pinpoint the manic sound of the cadence of what he was saying.
My God.
I've been around some people that have launched into something like that, and it's like, where are you right now? What's going on? Because that cadence of conversation isn't normal conversation. There's something going on there. And I'm not a trained psychologist. But I'm telling you, I've seen enough people that are struggling with something.
Yeah.
And they go into this weird state where they're blah, 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 blah. It just reminds me of Sybil with Sally Field,
Yeah. No,
you ever had to watch that?
It's running. I mean, when I see that and listen to it, I was wondering I'm like, are we watching someone that, I mean, he's self-admitted to it in his sermons of having some issues, mental health issues, and him taking medication as well. I'm wondering, like, maybe you need to take another look at that or a closer look, because you don't seem to be very balanced in that interview. It's all over the place. It's a lot of rambling. It's repeating a narrative over and over and over. And I'm not saying the narrative is false. I'm just saying the way it's being presented is really fucking weird and uncomfortable. And it reeks of that there's something more to this story. But I don't know that there is, other than this could be another person who's very mentally ill, and this is how they communicate. I don't know the answer to that.
I think this was a combination of two people who are extremely toxic to one another and fed off of each other. And it ended poorly for one of them. It ended poorly for him too.
Yeah.
But being on the outside and seeing this story, number one, I don't know why we're here. I don't know why we know about this story. It's none of our fucking business. And I don't mean that from we shouldn't be covering it. It shouldn't be this public. This is something the poor family just needs to grieve and figure out what happened. He's the one who made this public, and it just feels like we're all just peering into somebody's window at night. Their lights are on and they don't know that we're staring in, is how it feels.
It does. And that's what makes it so weird, because I don't feel like he's necessarily trying to cover up a murder. I really don't feel that way, but I don't know what he's trying to do either, other than really just unload a whole bunch of private baggage about her publicly that doesn't need to be unloaded publicly. Right. It's like, have some respect for the woman. I mean, if she was suffering from all these things, okay, she eventually, hopefully she's in a better place now. And unfortunately that caught up to her. And she did what she did. But why are we out there spewing all of this stuff the way that it's being spewed? It's just weird. It's weird. It's nothing I could ever contemplate doing to a loved one if they had ended their life in a horrible way. I don't think I'd be out there like, and by the way, here's all the fucking crazy shit that they did. You know, it's like, I mean, you're not charged with anything. And if you look at the case itself under a bit more of a microscope, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't appear that this was anything other than a suicide. It doesn't. Was there abuse and all that? That there's allegations of it. I'm not here to judge it either way, but there certainly is a lot of people saying there was, including Mica herself. But there's only two people who know the answer to that, and one of them's dead.
Yeah.
But it's just fucking weird. When Mica Miller's death was ruled a suicide, John Paul Miller did not question the investigators' findings, believing there was no other plausible explanation. "My Lord, let my wife be at peace. She's in heaven," he said. "She's not worrying about all this stuff. She had suicidal tendencies over and over, year after year, off medication especially." It's, I don't know. I mean, he can argue on his end that he's just trying to get his side of the story out, as people are going through this with a fine-tooth comb, and he wants to have his voice heard. But he's not doing himself any favors. I'll tell him that much. He's not doing himself any favors.
No.
If that is the case, find a better way to communicate, because this is not helping his... It's making people far more suspect of him than ever before. And I don't know what suspect of. That's the thing, because I don't think it was murder. I think people certainly suspect abuse with the allegations that have been made, but we don't know. I just don't know what the benefit to this is for him.
He's getting attention, and you've brought that up before. I just feel like this might be his way of trying to heal, and I feel it's damaging her legacy, her reputation. He's aired everything, and she deserves closure and privacy at this time. Yeah. That's my feeling.
Well, I feel like it's damaging him too, the more he speaks. If he wants to keep preaching and not have people questioning what the hell's going on, it's just, I don't know. It felt like a train wreck. If you want to watch the entire thing, NewsNation is where to do that, and on Ashley Banfield's program. It's certainly worth checking out in a visual form.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.